What's up, guys? Welcome back to Lockdown Universe, home of the bizarre, peculiar, and unheard of stories of UFO legend and lore. Welcome back. Hopefully, you guys had a good week and a good start to your summer vacation, if you're having a summer vacation or not. I know a lot of people are going on vacation these days, so hopefully, things are going well for you. Some definitely interesting stories have been coming out lately, and I thought this one was interesting because I'm always kind of fascinated as to what NASA is doing, or at least what they're telling us they're doing, right? Of course, they're doing all kinds of stuff going on behind the scenes, but in this story, released June 3rd in the Smithsonian's mag, is a story about NASA launching tardigrades and baby squid into space. Now, if you don't know what tardigrades are, they're one of the smallest creatures on the planet that can survive basically unlivable conditions by any other creature. So they're also called water bears because they kind of look like little bears, but I think they have like 8 arms or something like that. So they're very interesting creatures, and we were trying to learn a lot about them because my theory is that they're trying to gain some information and genetically splice some of their DNA into ours or into some other creature, and use it for our benefit, right? Whether it's another vaccine or another, a DNA splicing experiment using CRISPR or whatever the case is. But let's take a look at this article and kind of see what NASA says they're doing with it, right? So they say it may seem a little bit odd to catapult these tiny creatures into space, but studying them could help scientists understand the impact of space travel on the human body. Well, I'm calling BS on that. Why the hell are you going to send a dog into space to know how it's going to react to space travel? We already know this. We've already been to the moon. We know how space affects humans. We have humans in the International Space Station. So that whole story is just a bunch of BS. So, we can eliminate that option right off the table. Tardigrades, they kind of give us some information here, are less than a tenth of an inch long, and despite looking like gummy bears, they are famous for being almost indestructible. They can survive blasts of radiation. Imagine that. They can survive intense pressure and even the cold, airless vacuum of space. So, it just goes to show you how indestructible these things are, right? A blast of radiation, I mean, we can't do that. Intense pressure, can't do that. Cold, airless vacuum of space, humans are definitely going to die doing that, right? But imagine, for a moment, if they could splice that DNA into humans. That'd be a totally different scenario, right? Now we become almost invincible to most, nature's worst, elements. So moving forward here, they say space flight can be really a very challenging environment for organisms, including humans, who have evolved to conditions on Earth, according to a molecular biologist at the University of Wyoming. One of the things we are really keen to do is to understand how tardigrades are surviving and reproducing in these environments, and whether we can learn anything about the tricks that they are using and adapt them to safeguard astronauts. So they're looking at the surviving and reproducing, so they want their astronauts to reproduce in space as well. One of the other statements is that tardigrades produce a lot of antioxidants, which may give them insights into how to safeguard humans. Well, we know that antioxidants definitely help humans' diets and allow us to live longer. We know that there's resveratrol in grapes that can allow us to stall or even reverse the aging process. So if you look up resveratrol, there's resveratrol supplements. It's an antioxidant, which is interesting. Antioxidation. Oxidation is known to cause rust in iron. Oxidation in humans, meaning after being oxidized, allows us to live. So why would we need to antioxidize? Maybe there's a better word to use other than antioxidizing the human body. But nonetheless, moving forward, they're also launching baby squids. The newborn cephalopods are being sent to space with a different experiment in mind, one that takes advantage of the special feature of the bobtail squid, the fact that they have luminescence. The squid's eerie blue lights are facilitated by a symbiotic relationship with bacteria that colonize the tentacled creature's light organs. So there's a symbiotic relationship that causes this luminescence in the baby squid. So they go on to say that animals, including humans, rely on our microbes to maintain a healthy digestive immune system, and we do not fully understand how spaceflight alters these beneficial interactions. So it's more and more interesting. NASA's becoming very interested in the biology of humans in existing in space and the symbiotic relationships that allow us to continue to survive. And sometimes these symbiotic relationships can be twofold. Sometimes the symbiotic relationship can harm us and help us at the same time. There's bacteria in the human body that some of us have called the H. pylori bacteria, which causes inflammation in the stomach. However, it also reduces esophageal cancer potential. So while it's creating inflammation, it's also preventing or reducing esophageal cancer in those individuals. Now, typically, medical studies and science will tell you we should eliminate that bug from your stomach, but it's near impossible to do that. They put you underneath a threefold bacteria antibiotic to kill the bacteria. So you have to take 3 antibiotics at the same time to try to kill this thing, and that's not even 100% effective. So it goes to show you that yes, we can have symbiotic relationships. However, sometimes they can be good and bad. And so, what do these tardigrades have, and what do these baby squid have that allow them to continue to live their life at a more survivable rate than what we have? Is very fascinating to NASA. It's fascinating to me too, and probably yourself. But anytime we launch any living thing into space, it's always interesting to look into, right? And to kind of see what they're saying they're looking for. So yeah, even in this article, they talk about microbes that are in the human gut that are crucial for human health, and looking into how to extend life and extend overall health for their astronauts. Well, I'll tell you what would be really good for their astronauts would be to not utilize propulsion energy and engines in their aircraft, and to just use the alien aircraft engines that are faster than light that we already have that have crashed. That's just my 2 cents. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about this? I mean, in the last podcast, I talked about how we were bombarding the moon, or maybe it was a couple podcasts ago, how we had sent a rocket to the moon in the L-Cross project to bomb the moon to see if there was water there, which was a total bunch of BS. We know that was used for militarized purposes and not for bombing the moon to see if there's water there, moon water. We know that there's moisture there. We know that there's an atmosphere there. So we know a lot of information about the moon, and about what NASA's not really telling us. But in that podcast, we talked about how anything that we send out into space probably has some sort of second agenda. And, what this tardigrade experiment could be a legit experiment. They could be trying to find out information about tardigrades and baby squid and how to engineer astronauts to survive longer. But what would that mean? That would mean that we would have to take some of their DNA and basically have to utilize it in our DNA. The same way that, we create vaccines, the same way we create, a lot of other, health projects through utilizing other animals' DNA. And then creating a vaccine, like the chicken, we use eggs in making vaccines typically. I don't think they did that with the corona vaccine, but they usually do it with all the flu vaccines. There's always egg in there. And so, luckily, it didn't make us part chicken that we know of. I'm a little chicken, but that's just a joke. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to look at, okay, they're going to take this tardigrade, which is basically invincible. They're going to take some of its DNA, they're going to put it probably into a human somehow, whether it's through a shot or pill or some other method, to change our DNA. So what the aliens have been doing has been doing DNA experiments on humans and on aliens, making hybrids and trying to find the best solution for survivability. Well, look at what we're doing. We're doing the same exact thing. We're doing genetic experiments. Now, we're launching tardigrades out into space. And we might be looking at alien abductions as this cruel thing that they're doing to us, and how dare they? And we have to be able to fight back. But are we any better at shooting tardigrades out into space? Imagine if they just shot us out into space to see if we survived. Luckily they're bringing us back home after they're doing our experiments. So it just goes to show yes, there's different alien species out there. Yes, some of them are more malevolent than benevolent, but in the grand scheme of DNA alteration, trying to increase the survivability of our race, and make us healthier, stronger, better, faster. There's something to be said there for DNA manipulation and for progressing the species. So, hopefully, some of these beneficial, pieces of evidence that they find will make their way towards some of us regular folk. Maybe some of us have already been able to benefit from that. We have a lot of research that is going into the CRISPR experimentation, and they're talking about the future. Who's going to be in that advantage state. You're going to have a lot of these financially privileged individuals who want to manipulate their DNA to make them smarter, better, faster, stronger, right? And then it's going to be, game over. It's just going to be who has more money. It's going to be like the Yankees versus the Athletics. You're going to have the Yankees who can buy every muscle and all-star out there, and you're going to have the Athletics that can't hardly afford a decent player, yet they still found a way to win, according to that movie Moneyball. But which is a good movie, by the way. You should definitely check that out. But nonetheless, it's going to be really interesting. The future is going to be interesting with DNA manipulation. There's a show out about it right now on Netflix called Sweet Tooth, where they were trying. It's almost kind of eerie in a way. It speaks to what we're talking about right now, as well as the world that we were kind of like living in last year with the virus, where they were DNA manipulating to find a cure for their virus in the show, and then they accidentally made hybrid children as a byproduct of their development. And so the show's really good. Got through season 1. It was just released this year. You should definitely check it out. It's very interesting, very fascinating. But it's in that show, they talk about manipulating the genes, and they were creating all kinds of half human, half animal beings. And the more DNA manipulation we see with these alien species is along the same lines of what we're doing now. They were blending our two species together to survive. Well, could we blend ourselves with a bird so that we can, have wings? Can we blend ourselves with, a strong ox to have super strength, super muscles? What else can we blend ourselves with? Can we blend ourselves with the tardigrade so that we can survive forever, right? There's been many articles where they talked about them being bulletproof. Imagine if you could walk down the streets of Chicago, right, with not having to wear a bulletproof vest, but you're bulletproof. because your skin is impenetrable. You can survive underwater. You can survive in a vacuum of space. So if there was no breathable air, you could still continue to survive. Imagine having all those superpowers. You would be a superhuman. And these individuals who are, at the helm of CRISPR and these other DNA scientific sites, you gotta wonder if they haven't just spliced their own DNA, threw in whatever, and made themselves the guinea pigs to see if they could do it. Yeah, is it super dangerous? Sure. Is it, potentially lethal? Sure. Could you end up like Jeff Goldblum in The Fly, just like molting? Sure. But from what we know about human psychology, there's no shortage of, somebody willing to take something too far. And these scientists are definitely willing to do that. I mean, I remember being a kid and them showing us the picture of the mouse where they were able to DNA clone a human ear onto the mouse. And it was a human ear on the back of the mouse. And there was a picture of it. And this is this is back in the 90s. So imagine what they can do now, in harvesting and trying to create new body parts for humans. They just creating them on the backs of mouses and then just taking them off, putting them on a human, bada bing, bada boom. Well, now we probably can even jump even farther than that since we have 3D printers and can probably 3D print human organs. But you can't just print a wing and put it on somebody's back. You have to DNA manipulate that to have it be able to be functional, right? To have all the nerve endings, to have all the musculature, to have the support, right? To create a half human, half bird, to create a half human, half ox, right? I mean, you'd have to manipulate that into a shot. And it would be really interesting to see if we could create some X-Men out there. And I think, in summation, and to wrap this up, that I think that there's no doubt that the government is definitely trying to do that. And I mean, it sounds like, science fiction, but they're basically saying it right out. We're trying to figure out how to make astronauts stronger, better, more able to survive in harsh environments. And what are they going to do? They're going to use DNA to do that. So, what do you think? Would you be willing to take some DNA to make yourself superhuman? Haven't we already taken DNA in the COVID-19 vaccine to make ourselves superhuman, to avoid the severe effects of the disease? It's fascinating. We're using DNA already in the vaccines that we have. The future is going to be interesting, folks. Stay tuned. There'll be more to come. Anyway, I hope that you guys are taking care of your mental health, your spiritual health, physical health, taking care of your hobbies and your goals and your dreams, always following up on those, doing that, taking time out for yourself, and as always, continuing to question the universe around you. Until next time, guys, take care. Lockdown Universe out.